Hi there, this is Pete Wright bringing you another Photoshop tutorial for PluggedInPhoto.com. One of the most common questions that I'm asked is how we pop the detail in the eyes for our portraits. To us, it's one of the most important things that our studio does is making sure that you feel engaged and you feel like the person in the photos is looking right back at you, especially in a photo like this one where they really are, the brides are really staring right at the camera. So what we're going to do is just jump right in. Typically what I would answer, by the way, before I get into it, typically my answer would be we use a combination of actions that we've created along with third-party plugin softwares like Nik software. But you know, I'm a firm believer that anything that you buy, you can actually do within Photoshop just with the tools that it has without having to spend the money. So what I'm going to do today is go through and show you how to work on her eyes just by using the tools that exist in Photoshop. So first of all, what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom in so everything I do you can actually see exactly how it's affecting her eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and create a duplicate of the original layer. In PC World, Control J, and Mac World, Command J. And we've made our duplicate. Now, I'm going to do all of my work on duplicate layers because if I make any really bad mistakes, I can essentially just delete that top layer and I'm right back to my original layer. So what we're going to do first is go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. And I'm going to take the brightness up to the low 60s, 61, 62 in that area somewhere. It's fine. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for contrast. Low 60s, 61, 62, 63 in that area is just fine. There we go. And that looks pretty good to me. You want to go a little brighter than what would feel natural. There we go. And if you zoom out, you'll see, wow, we've actually completely blown out the details of his face and her dress and everything like that. But her eyes have gotten a lot brighter. So that's the first step. Now we're going to go to the next step, and we're going to hit Control U or Command U. Control U for PC, Command U for Mac, and we're going to bring up hue and saturation. And now we're going to just mess with the saturation. And we're going to bring that up somewhere between the mid-20s and mid-30s. For her, probably mid-30s is good. You don't want to go way up here because then you kind of get that Children of the Corn look. We don't want to go crazy with it. But right around there is good. And we're going to hit OK. Now, looking at it there, you're like, well, it doesn't seem crazy, but it doesn't seem crazy just based on it matches the rest of her face, which we've completely blown out and lost detail, and the color's way off. But if you look at the original, okay, definitely a difference. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to back to the original background layer, and again we're going to make another duplicate. Control J or Command J, depending on whether you're PC or Mac, and we're going to drag that above the layer we just worked. Now I'm going to create a mask, and we're going to use keyboard shortcut B, or you can go here on brush, it's already clicked, and select our brush. For hardness on the brush, I've got it dragged all the way down, so I've got 0 hardness. I want a nice soft brush, soft edges, so that it feathers really nicely. And we're going to zoom way in, and we're just going to focus on the area here between the outer edge of her eye and her pupil, and start painting that in. And I like leaving that band of that dark line around the outside of her eye there, and I don't want to mess with her pupil yet, just because I love the look of it. Adds the drama to it. And sometimes you'll actually have somebody like with lighter color eyes that doesn't have that band there, and actually when you're doing this effect, if you don't go all the way to the edge, you can actually create that little bit of a band there, and it really makes their eyes pop. It just brings a little bit more drama into their eyes. Now, when I'm done here, it actually starts looking like, okay, that looks like maybe a werewolf or something out of True Blood, or one of those shows with a werewolf. Her eyes are a little bit crazy. And that's what we're going for initially. Now we're going to go back to this middle layer, the one where her eyes have all that color and contrast and brightness. We're going to bring the opacity down. Somewhere in the mid-40s is usually pretty good. So yeah, right about there. And it feels a little bit more natural, especially when we zoom out, and not that far, but when we zoom out and we start seeing, okay, her eyes definitely pop a little bit more. Here's before and after. So we definitely have the color that we're looking for. So once I'm comfortable with what I've got in terms of brightness, contrast, and color, then I'm going to go ahead and actually flatten this completely down, knowing that if I needed to, I could go back in history to the very first image and start all over. So I'm not saving yet. So I'm going to go Control Shift E or Command Shift E, depending on whether you're PC or Mac, and flatten the entire thing. Now, the next level, we're going to do a little bit more to pop it and sharpen it. We're going to, again, Control J or Command J and duplicate that layer. Now, there's several different ways to bring sharpness to an image. One of the most common ways, you can actually go in to sharpen, and Smart Sharpen is fantastic. But what we're going to use is actually high pass. I'm going to show you how to do high pass sharpening. Once we're here, I usually like to stay somewhere between 8 and 10. The higher you go, that's when you start running into halos. Like if you were doing a landscape building, a landscape photo, or a photo of buildings and trees and stuff like that. If you did a high pass sharpen and you brought this number way, way up, you'd start seeing halos around the edges of buildings and leaves on trees and things like that. This seems to be a pretty good number. It's a comfortable landing spot. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, from here, it looks really, really odd. If you zoom out, it's like a grayed out photo, like a tintype or something. It's very odd. So what we need to do is actually go through and make some adjustments so that that doesn't look odd. We're going to change our adjustment layer. Now, you've got 3 different adjustment layers that work with this: overlay, soft light, and hard light. Overlay would be average sharpening. Soft light would be a softer sharpening, and hard light would be a harder sharpening. So I'm just going to show you that. We'll start with soft light. So soft light compared to nothing, you can definitely see some sharpening. Now we're going to go from soft light to overlay. That's a little bit more sharpness. And now we're going to go to hard light. So that's the absolute most sharpness that you can get out of that. So we'll zoom back and say, okay, wow, it's really sharpened the entire image. Well, I don't want the entire image. I liked the way the image looked before. I just want to affect our eyes. So once again, I'm going to go to this background layer. I'm going to hit Control J in a PC, Command J in a Mac, duplicate that layer, and drag it back onto the top. And once again, I'm going to create a layer mask. Now I'm going to go back to my brush tool one more time, and we're already there. Now this time I'm going to erase away by coloring, and I'm making sure that that black is selected so that I'm simply drawing. Now, if we made a mistake and we did that, all I have to do is go back and switch to the white, and I can actually go back and draw this all back in. So that's the nice thing. That's the difference. That's the reason we use the layer mask instead of an actual erase tool, because if I make a mistake, I can just draw it back in. So I'm going to go back and switch this so that the black's on the top. And now this time I'm actually going to hit the entire eye. And we're going to go through and sharpen that line on the outside and the pupil, the color, the whole thing. And that looks really cool. Again, we're almost getting back to that werewolf type look, and we'll end up fixing that. We don't want her to look crazy, but we have to, you kind of take it to one extreme and then ease it back. So that's good. We're about where we need to be. Now, again, I'm going to go back to that middle layer, grab the opacity, and start bringing it down until it's at a place that I feel comfortable. And this time I'm a little bit more in the mid-30s, and I feel pretty good right there. Now we're going to pull back and let you see. And that's where we end up. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. I really like the way that looks. I'm going to go ahead and Control-Shift-E on a PC, Command-Shift-E in a Mac, flatten that down. And I'm going to go all the way back in history and let you see. This is how the image started, just like that. And then I go back, and this is where we ended. And you can see the eyes really pop, especially when we zoom back. I want it to have that impact from far away because our eyes are smaller in this image, and I just want it to pop. There's the original, and there it is with that pop. Just that, a little bit of pop. And the nice thing about this is if you were to go through and convert it to black and white, which would be Control-Shift-U in a PC, Command-Shift-U in a Mac, her eyes still just have such good pop. It's just all the difference in the world. But it's a very simple, and it's free. You can just use what you've got in Photoshop already and add that pop in your eyes. And again, it's to taste. So you can actually go through and say, wow, that's a little bit more over the top than what I would do. So I'm going to do a little less by adjusting the opacity even further down. But at least you know it's a really good way of getting great detail in the eyes. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and keep checking back with PluggedInPhoto.com to see more of our great tutorials.